Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Snyder. I'm a support specialist here at Aladtec. Today's webinar should run about 45 minutes, starting off with just a brief overview of Aladtec. Then I'll hand it off and you can get right into looking at an overview of the Aladtec system. So today we'll go over some features such as the member database, which is a great tool for setting up work qualifications, tracking member certifications, setting up messaging notifications, and much more. Then we'll talk a little bit about our schedule views and dive into some of the different ways you can view things such as trades, time off, events, and really see how you can filter it to get the exact information you need to see at any given time. We'll go over our customizable forms feature, which allows you to go paperless by creating electronic forms such as rig checks, end of shift reports, PO requests, and whatever specific forms your department or agency might need. From forms, we can share a little bit about how Aladtec reports work. See how you can take all the information in your Aladtec system and really filter it down and generate some really useful reports. Finally, we'll have a brief Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you do have questions during the webinar, go ahead and post them in our GoToWebinar questions panel, and a support representative will be monitoring those and answer them as they come in, and maybe save a few to share with everyone at the end. So what is Aladtec? We're an online scheduling and workforce management software solution specially built from the ground up to handle the unique staffing habits of public safety agencies across the US and Canada. We started in 2002 as a web-based scheduling system for a local ambulance service, and since then, Aladtec has grown to host more than 2,300 agencies with 145,000 users across the US and Canada. Today, we're based here in River Falls, Wisconsin, about 30 minutes east of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Our law enforcement customers range from small rural departments with 15 officers to large urban agencies with hundreds of officers. We do everything here in-house from engineering and configuration to sales and support as well. When you call, you'll always speak with a real person in Wisconsin. You can access Aladtec anytime online via desktop, tablet, or smartphone. It updates instantly so you always have the most up-to-date version of your schedules and other content. There are no extra costs. We provide all setup, training, and unlimited telephone support as long as you're an Aladtec user. With Aladtec, it's all customizable. We can create schedules as unique as your department needs. As long as you can describe the pattern, we can help you replicate it as a schedule. Speaking of schedules, let's switch gears here now and we'll give you an overview of Aladtec's features and some of its benefits, and this will help you determine whether our system is a good fit for your organization.
All right. Thank you, Dave. And hello, everyone. I appreciate everybody who's with us here today. And as Dave mentioned, I will be taking you through this kind of generic test environment that I have for law enforcement, and definitely jump in with questions and throw those into the GoToWebinar control panel as I'm navigating through. Again, we have a moderator who will be answering a lot of those, and I will answer some of those at the end myself too. So we're just really going to go ahead and jump right into things here. But one thing I always like to mention before we jump into a generic system is that our system is very customizable. So just because it looks one way now doesn't mean that we can't, of course, make changes to accommodate to how your department operates and what your specific needs are, which is something that we can take you through as far as part of a discovery process to learn about how you operate and how we can match that with Aladtec. But to give you the general idea of how these functions are going to work, what we're going to be jumping into is our desktop version primarily today from an administrator's view. I will also show you a little bit later on what the mobile version looks like, but right when you log in on your computer, this is the first screen you're going to see. Really just some basic instructions, but you can absolutely customize this first screen here. I see a lot of departments put training material. If you want links for videos, images, whatever you need to, this part on the left here is completely customizable. And then you also do have a dashboard off to your right, which gives you a brief summary of what's going on in your system right now. So any sort of pending requests, if you have trades, any signups, let's say a couple vacation days that are awaiting your approval, those are all going to be listed right there on the right. We also do have the any sort of upcoming shifts, any information expiration. So if you did want to track any sort of instructor's licenses or certifications, our system will tell you when those are coming close to expiring or have actually expired. And then any events, trades, or discussions, which are all items we'll be navigating through here today. But that's just your dashboard to give you some of that information. And the next screen we're going to run through before we look at the schedule is our member database. So this is where we store all of the profiles for everybody. So any sort of information that you want to track for them can be stored right into here. Completely up to you as to what that information is. Some people will just have contact information. Other departments might have up to 100 different fields populated with different data. So very common to have hire date, emergency contact information, address, along with some of those different certifications I had mentioned. So letting you know when those are coming close to expiring or have expired. There's a lot of different functions to sort through this data. You can click on the headers there to sort that oldest to newest or alphabetically. And then also there's some filters here in the top right corner where you can pick and choose what you're looking at and who you're looking at, which again, depending on kind of the size of your department, it's up to you as how you're going to save some of those different options. And then to give you kind of a run through of what the actual profile looks like, if I hover over K here on top and hit edit member, that'll take us right into that person's profile. So on an individual basis, this is more what they would see, as the previous screen is only accessible to more of your administrators. So we have their first name, last name, username, access levels, some different profiles that we can assign to people, but I did want to talk about the messaging information, as this is where each person will enter in their mobile phone number and their email address, and they can choose their preference, as text messages and emails are the primary communication tools we will use. So once that's all entered in, like I said, they can choose their preference. So any sort of time off or trades, I can select, I prefer emails for those, but I want text messages for my trades. We have different coverage alerts and form notifications we'll be talking about, but there is another tool here called our upcoming shift reminder that does send out a message 24 hours before each of your shifts. And that's just going to remind you of when and where you're actually working that next day. So as you can imagine, that's very important for any sort of part-time staff, as your full-timers might not necessarily need to use that, but it's absolutely an option if they want to. Right below that section is our different work qualifications. So this is where we tell the system what this person's allowed to interact with. Can they volunteer for a dispatch position? Are they only qualified as an officer? Or can they step up into a lieutenant role or a sergeant role to act into that position? So lots of different ways that we can define these, as almost everybody we work with has different schedules and positions that they want to structure their calendar with. So that's definitely customizable. And then we also do have a time off accrual section. If anyone has interest in tracking this in our system, it is an optional feature. But if you do want to actually track how many hours they have in their banks available to them, so how much vacation, how much comp, how much sick, we can create these different profiles that will automatically load in hours into those banks based on their years of service. Whatever those different tiers are in your department, we can build that right into here. And then as that's adding in those hours, the balance will grow. And then from there, when any of those hours are used, just based on the schedule, time off requests, things like that, it will automatically deduct from those banks and make sure they have a live balance at all times. The only one that can get a little tricky is comp time, just as everybody does that a little bit different, but that's something that we can absolutely touch on during a conversation if you're interested. The bottom portion of this is really the customizable part of our database. So everything that you see here so far, these are just some sample options that we have preloaded in. You don't have to use any of these. And what you can do is go into your members tab to your database configurator page. And if we navigate to this screen, I can go in and I can really delete any of the fields that I don't necessarily want to use. So I can just click right onto these trash cans, start pulling those right out of there. And then all you have to do from the left side is just drag and drop any new options right into here. So super easy to build out. You pull these right in. You can relabel them as needed. And then as far as the certification tracking goes, or just in general, we do also have an attachment option. So if you did want to upload like a scanned copy of a document or a license or something to that person's profile, you can utilize that with the attachment tool. All right. So we're going to back up to the main database page here again, and there's a couple more small items I wanted to show you, and then we'll be moving on to the actual calendar, and that is our mass messaging function. So if you wanted to send a message to every single person in your roster, really all you have to do is just check this box in the top left corner, that's going to select everybody's name, and from there you can just click send message. And the nice part about that is that's where you can do an email and a text, or an email or a text. And that can absolutely be targeted to certain groups of people, full-time, part-time, sergeants, whatever that may be. But another thing to bear in mind too is this is just for general notification purposes. If you want to send out meeting reminders, things like that. If you're looking for coverage for an actual shift, there's a completely separate tool that we're going to be walking through on the actual schedule. All right, so just to kind of get an idea of everybody who's here today and to keep things interactive, I'm gonna run a quick poll here, and I'm just kind of curious as to what really is the best description of your agency. Um, so feel free to go ahead and start choosing some of those different options: a police department, sheriff's office, schools, emergency management, really just to kind of get an idea. And a lot of times what I'll do is when we're looking at the schedule, kind of tailor that description to who we have here. But we'll give that just a few moments, and then I'll go ahead and share those. All right, what do we have here? Okay, so it looks like, oh, okay, about 70-30, municipal and sheriff's departments, perfect. Yeah, and I'd say that's the vast majority of the law enforcement that we work with. Definitely have a handful of school and campus also, but happy to see that. All right, so back to the screen share here. Let's jump into the actual schedule itself. Um, so depending on the size of your department, of course, your schedules might look significantly different from a 25 officer to a 250, deputy type system, something like that. Now, what we're looking at right now is our monthly calendar view. This is really the most utilized view that we offer, as it gives you the big picture of everything that's going on for the whole month. Now, if you are a much larger department, what's very important is that you utilize the filters. So you might have upwards of 45, 50 different schedules. And what you can do is really tailor the access to who's allowed to see what areas. I can go under my edit link right here. And if I just want to look at first shift, I can hit apply. And then that's going to really reduce the size of my screen and just show me that particular group. So the filters are very important. The different views that we offer are worth pointing out. So under these 4 calendar tabs, there's a few different options. If I click my weekly shifts view, this is just going to give me 7 days at a time, kind of left to right each day, and who's working what position. So just a little bit less to look at if the month can be a little overwhelming, but some people like to see it that way. And then we also do have a couple of different daily views. So if you are looking for more of just a roster for the day, this will give you just who's working that particular day. So these views are all great for more administrative purposes or anybody who's working on managing the schedule. But one of the other screens that's very important, really more for the officers or deputy side of things, is the My Schedule screen here. So if we go into our Schedules tab, click My Schedule, as Frankie here, this is really the only screen in our system that Frankie needs to know how to use. You can see his own personal calendar. We still give them access to see the main calendar so they can see who they're working with, et cetera, things like that. But primarily they can just go into the My Schedule, and then this is also where they can put in any of their own requests. So if I wanted to put in, let's say, a vacation day, I just click right onto that shift. I get two options. I can either request a trade or time off. We hit request time off. This is where you get your date and your time range. So if you want to do just half of a shift, or maybe put in a time off request for a whole week, you can adjust that. We'll choose vacation. And then if you are utilizing the accrual system, just know it will tell you how many hours you have available to you, how much this is going to cost you, and then how much you'll have after approval. So Frankie here wouldn't necessarily have those hours available to him. But we can still push this request through just for the sake of testing purposes. So after that's been requested, I can have that route a notification to whomever you'd like to receive that. So maybe that's just your first shift sergeants, or maybe you have your lieutenants who are approving things. Completely up to you for that messaging chain and how we structure that in. And then very similar with trades, when I click on this shift here, I can hit request trade. We do have two different types of trades. We have giveaways and we have swaps. Some departments allow giveaways where that's just you offering up your shift to see if somebody can work for you, and they'll pick it up, and that's the end of that transaction. So you might have people who owe each other days, or maybe you don't necessarily have anyone owe anything. But we do also have swaps, which we can make a little more restrictive. Swaps, I can also make so that if you require that they're paid back within the same pay period or same week, 28-day cycle, anything, I can make it so that these are all regulated by those rules. So it's not as flexible as the giveaways, and we kind of have the options to go either way, whichever you're looking for. And the nice part about the trades is that's really between the officers. So if Frankie puts out that request, that would send a text message or an email to whomever is able to pick that up. And let's say Perry here is willing to pick that up. So when Perry logs in, I can click onto this. I can see Frankie put in a request for the 8th. We'll go ahead and agree to that. And then once I've agreed to that trade, that's now where it goes up for my supervisor's approval again. All right. So as you can see, this screen is fairly simple, pretty easy to use, and that's why typically for officer training purposes, all we needed to really do is teach them how to use this one screen and then how to get our mobile app on their phone. So moving back to the main calendar here to more of the administrative tasks, this is how you can go in and see some of these different requests and the ones that are waiting your approval. So if I wanted to approve a time off request or a trade, it really is just as simple as clicking on any of these requests here on the bottom. I can hit approve. That'll pull Frankie off for the day. This is what my minimum staffing indicator looks like. So my minimum staffing for first shift is 3, which is why that now appeared. Also for trades, you can click right onto that again. Very similar. You see a date and a timestamp for all the different actions that happened. Hit approve, and then that switch has now been made. So that's all you have to do. So Perry's now working for Frankie that day. You have a permanent trade record right there, and it also does send both of those people a message so they know that they were approved for that. Now, when you have a vacancy or an overtime position, this, of course, is another topic that everybody does a little bit different. So to notify people that you need coverage, the tool that we use is called a send coverage alert. And when I click on that blue envelope, there's really 2 different main options here. Option A is really just choosing this position, and then you can hit send. That'll take you about 2 seconds. As what this is going to do for you is only send this message to people who are qualified to work that position. It will automatically exclude anybody who's already working during that time frame, and then also exclude anybody who's on approved time off. You can choose it a little more manually if you want to, as far as individuals or based on work groups, part-time, things like that. But typically in this situation, it's kind of last minute. You page that out to everybody, and it is going to be pre-populated. So this is a preview of what the email looks like. It says, your department's looking for someone to cover the following. All the details are listed right in there. You hit send, that goes out text and email to everybody. And then from there, after you've sent that out, anybody who is interested can log into the system, and then they can volunteer and sign up for it. Now, generally speaking, with this method, this is going to require your approval. So what you would do is, as a scheduler, is go into your schedule for that day. We're going to hit edit schedule. And this is where you can review these signups. And the reason we take you into here is because I can pull a lot of good information right into this calculator section. So I can have a calculation on the total number of hours that they've worked in that cycle. I could track the overtime hours. I can pull in a seniority list. There's a number of different things that we can update right into here to hopefully make this decision really quick and easy for you. So if we're doing this based on seniority, I can see Perry's the more senior, hired in 2018. I can click on that sign up request. We can then apply a specific working code. These are really more for reporting purposes. If you plan on using some of our data for payroll or for just tracking overtime in general, I can say, this was overtime due to a sick call. Hit approve, and then that will now assign Perry to the schedule with that code. It's also done a couple of other things. When I approve that, it will automatically decline the other signup that was there. And then both people that were involved got a notification letting them know they were approved or denied for that. Now, another method for filling overtime shifts that some people might utilize is called our staggered coverage alerts. So this method is more where you can create a profile. So if we could create like an overtime profile, and the difference with this is it's more of a one-by-one contact method. So you can establish different rules that this sort list is created by. So whether that's last accepted, last offered, you can do it based on total hours, lots of different options here. But let's just say we do last offered. I can base that on ascending. We can, put a secondary criteria as seniority, for example. Now with this tool, again, like I said, what it'll do is you can define a time period. So it'll reach out to the first person at the top of your list. You can say, let's give them 15 minutes to respond, give them an hour, 2 hours, 2 days, whatever that may be. We'll just use 15 minutes. And if that person either declines it, it'll go to the next person. If they just ignore it and the 15-minute passes, then it'll move to the next person. But as you can see, it's more of a turn-based approach, rather where option A, the first method I showed you, is a mass message response type tool. So again, one of our account executives or system specialists would be happy to hear how you do your overtime now, and we could consult and see if your processes and how they could fit right into our system. All right. So going back to our schedule, one of the other really important screens is our hourly editor page. So this page, if you're going in and making a lot of daily changes to your schedule, this is really the most important one to get comfortable with, because there are a lot of drag and drop tools in here. If you're scheduling based on availability, or if I just want to take Seth here and move Seth from second shift up into first shift, the drag and drop tools from one schedule to another are really simple and easy. You can actually shorten or extend any of these shifts just by grabbing the edge of them and sliding those left to right. And this also kind of comes into play if you're anybody who's staffing a lot of special events or details. So I can have kind of temporary schedules like a security detail that it really is always there for you, but you just have to open it up whenever you need it. So if I have a detail coming up this Thursday, just by sliding open those little blocks there, what that has now done is created an additional detail right on that particular day that I can now get staffed. So again, send out your coverage alert, etc., things like that. So those are primarily the scheduling tools that I wanted to run you through. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry, there's one more request. And this is very common in law enforcement, as I'm sure all of you know. So if you ever have anybody who is, let's say Frankie here is working till 6 to 1400, and I had a late arrest or I had paperwork or something came up that I had to stay an extra hour and a half. We do have another tool here, and that is called our extra hours request. Let me just verify this is turned on here really quick. It wasn't. There we go. All right. Perfect. So what Frankie can now do is actually put in a request for this. So this will typically replace like an overtime slip if you have a paper form for this. You can hover over the date there as Frankie. I can submit an extra hours request, and this is how he can actually communicate to you that I was supposed to get off at 1400, but I ended up getting off at 1600 that day. So I'll do 14 to 16. I can say I was working on patrol as an officer, and I'll take that as overtime. Type any notes here. This is typically where they will throw in like a reason, maybe a case number, whatever that may be. So they can hit request extra hours, and that's then something that you can just approve as their sergeant. So you don't have to manually go into the calendar and change their schedule. Very similar to like the time off or the trades, you can click right on the extra hours request, see all the details of why Frankie stayed late that day, hit approve, and that's now going to go into your reports. All right. So definitely let me know if you have any other specific scheduling questions in the comments of the GoToWebinar panel. Still have Dave in there answering questions if you need them, but I did want to show everybody the mobile view here too while we're looking at the schedule. And then we're going to look at a couple of other functions like our forms and our reports. So if we go ahead here and open up our mobile site, we're going to look at this as Frankie. All right, so this is what it's going to look like on your actual phone. So you open up our app right on your phone. The dashboard is going to be the first thing you're going to see. As you can tell, it's a lot more trimmed down because it's a lot less screen space to work with. But we have this specifically designed for those devices. So you have any sort of upcoming shifts, available trades, open shifts, time off, really just anything that's relevant that's coming up in the near future is what you're going to see here. Now, the two other main screens to look at is the daily summary page. The daily summary is how people can look at the main calendar and see who they're working with. It's also commonly used to see who already has time off on a particular day. You know, if I'm looking to put in a vacation day 2 months out, I can double check and see if anybody has already requested that. So you can go through kind of day by day or choose specific days under your little calendar selector here. And then you also do have a My Schedule page, which this functions almost identically to the previous screen I was just showing you on the computer version. So on my phone, if I want to see when I'm working on the 15th, I just tap right onto the 15th. It'll show me what I'm working on the bottom. I can tap on the 17th here. You can see there's a trade. There's any events that are, it looks like we got firearms training going on that day. So really easy to utilize. The My Schedule is probably one of the more important of the two. And then any sort of forms or other items like that, which we'll be talking about shortly here. But just wanted to give you a brief little run through of what the actual mobile site looks like and what the officers would be using, as it's very common that you might have a handful of officers that never even log into the computer version. They're going to be using the mobile, exclusively. Okay. All right, so next I wanted to talk about the forms tool. So the forms are where we can really create any sort of forms that you're using right now. It does not have to be related to your schedule at all. It's really anything that you're doing on paper, we can typically convert into our system and get that electronic for you. So this is just kind of an example option of what you can build. It's very easy to build and you can do this all yourself. Again, it's just drag and drop. So you grab from the left side here, you start pulling these options in, and then you can relabel them as needed. It's very common to see like any sort of vehicle check sheets if you have them doing weekly or monthly vehicle inspections. This is an example of what one of our customers is using right now. Really just some basics as far as the checklist of it. Is everything working? Is everything up to speed? But the cool part that we can do with these forms is when they go to fill this out, whether it's on a phone, tablet, computer, doesn't matter. I can have it route a notification to the person who needs to know this. We can even have the form smart enough to know that if everything is up to par and everything's good with the inspection, there's no notification. It just gets logged and it gets saved and you're good to go. But so if somebody comes in here and says, will my vehicle start? And I click the no button, right away I can have that automatically send an email to the, the garage or the mechanic or whomever you need to know that, and they can then log in and look at that submission. But like I said, anything, we do have some timesheets, equipment maintenance requests, any sort of incident reports. We even have like a COVID-19 screening form that one of our customers was using too, that they had built. So again, anything you're doing on paper, we can typically convert in here. Now, on top of that, one of the really important benefits you're also getting from making it electronic are the different reports that you can run. So especially if you're doing these things on paper now, you can pull reports on any sort of submissions for any range of time, and we can sort through this in a number of different ways. So you can absolutely run this report and see exactly what was ran. You can specifically dial it down using your edit link here to some of your, specific vehicle numbers or really anything you need to. And all of our reports are exportable into Excel. You can print them. You can save it as a PDF. There's a number of ways we can extract this data out of our system. And that's really going to be consistent too with any of our other reports. So we do have a scheduled time report. So all of your different data that's actually on your schedule. Just pull up an example here quick. This will give you a breakdown per shift, per person. We can track overtime, PTO, details, any sort of additional schedules, separated by dispatch, patrol, whatever you need. This one is going to have a breakdown per shift, per person. So there's a lot more detail in our scheduled time report, which again, these can be exported right into Excel. So if you need to do any sort of further calculations or things like that, you can absolutely do that on the Excel side of things. We do have a summary report, which this will give you a total number of hours rather than a breakdown per shift. And another one of the important reports that we have is called our system log. So actually, you know what, this is kind of a good transition to another poll that we have here. I'm just kind of curious. I'll launch this and see if we can get some responses as to how is everybody currently doing their scheduling at your agency right now. Are you coming from a different solution? Are you using spreadsheets? Those are probably the two primary ones that we see very commonly, but just kind of curious as to what you guys are all using right now. So we'll leave that open for another couple seconds here. Okay. Close that. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so about half are coming from another online scheduling solution, which is great. Just kind of seeing what else is out there. And a couple from spreadsheets, other, okay, perfect. So the reason I asked that question is because if you are coming from more of a manual solution, the system log becomes very important because it tracks every single action that's ever taken in here, gives you a documented audit trail that you can always look back on and see exactly who did what and when. And that's going to go back to day one of you using our system. So the accountability level goes up. There's no real arguments of I had my time off request in first, or things get lost like that. Now, as far as accountability goes, there's another tool that I wanted to show everybody that's called our required messages, where this is a type of message that I can go in, we'll create this, and we'll say there's a new policy, and we'll just create this example here quick. So this is a little bit different from our emails and our text messages, as what it's going to do when you create this is when I send that message to Frankie, the next time that person logs into Aladtec, this is the message they're going to see. And the best part about this is they can click on whatever they want. You cannot bypass this. But really the important thing to note is that they do have to log in to see it. But it will force them to acknowledge this message and then hit continue to actually log in to the program, which that's going to then give you a date and a timestamp for each and every one of them, so you can see who you sent it to, the dates and the timestamps of when each person read it, and log that right into here. So that kind of goes hand in hand with our storage area, just kind of moving down the line here. The storage area is where you can upload any sort of documentation. So whether you need any sort of policies, procedures, training material, it is common to see people load that into this section, and that's what some departments might use the required messages for verification that, hey, there's a new policy posted, you need to go read that. So they acknowledge that they're aware of it, they can go in and do that action once they have time, and then they can verify that they actually did look at that information. This is the only part of our system that actually does have a data cap on it. But 200 gigs is still a massive storage space. I'd be impressed if anybody was able to exceed that. All right, and just moving down the line a little bit more, we do have a discussions tab, totally optional if this is something you need to use. It's really common if you have a lot of part-time civilian or auxiliary staff that you might not see often. It's really just a place where you can create a post, people can make comments on it, and have a documented discussion right in here. But if this is something that you already have a system for, I can turn it off, totally up to you. And then to the help section, we do have a great library here of different training videos, which are going to come in, which are going to be very important during implementation as far as getting certain people up to speed on different areas. As far as implementation goes, kind of our general process is when you're looking at Aladtec and learning about what it can do, and as we're learning about how you operate, we'll kind of go through that discovery process. We'll get you into a custom system, and from there, throughout your evaluation process, if that's something that you choose would be a good fit, and you're going to move forward with Aladtec, the same people that are helping you go through that trial period, we will be the ones that actually help you through that implementation. So we'll schedule training sessions. We can host that with any of your supervisors or your line staff. Completely up to you as to what's going to be the best for you. But a lot of people do like more video content or written material, and this is a great resource for a lot of that information. Now, on top of what the system specialists can do for you throughout the implementation portion, once you're up and running, what you also get access to is our outstanding support team. I can't speak highly enough about this team and what they do. You can ask any of our current customers, and I'm sure they'll give great feedback. You can give these guys a call. We are primarily staffed Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Central, but we do have an emergency contact line. But the best part about this team is when you call that number, you're going to get a live person on the other end of the phone. They're going to be an expert in the system. They're all on site with us here. They're very literally, 50 feet away from me as I sit right now. And you don't have to go through a phone tree, any sort of, press 1 to talk to this person, anything like that. You'll get a live person on the phone who's an expert right away and happy to answer any of your questions. Okay. Just looking through some of the questions here as we're just about to wrap up. Okay, so I did want to point out a couple of things also in the GoToWebinar control panel. There are some handouts. If you don't want to stick around for the Q&A, feel free to check out those handouts. Of course, you can absolutely go to our website or give us a call, anything like that, but there's some great resources right in there, and I'll be posting our contact information here shortly. But that's really everything I have for the generic walkthrough here today for everybody. I will leave it open for about another 5 minutes or so here if people have questions that you've been holding on to. So if you have been, feel free to drop those in the questions panel now. I only have a couple in there at the moment, so I'll get those answered, but if more trickle in, we'll get those taken care of. All right. Okay, so really to kind of give you a basic run through of the configuration here, I had a couple people asking me on more of the back end settings of our system, and how can this be done? How can this be configured? If you're a top level admin within our system, one of the sections you'll get access to, which most people won't, is our setup area. So if you go back into the setup area, this is where you can go in, you can create any new access levels. You're not restricted to just top level admin or member. You can have as many lieutenants, sergeants, whatever breakdowns that you need. You can have those defined right in here, and we can really go in and tailor what exactly that particular person needs to have access to. So that's the general run through of your access levels. And then we also do have different work groups that we can kind of pair people with. So very commonly set up as a full-time, part-time type designation. So if I go to just my patrol group, this is where you could have certain work limits or overtime rules for them. Work limits are commonly set up to give you a warning if anybody's exceeding a certain number of hours in a row. Total number of hours are more for a range of time. So anything, if you want to limit a part-timer to 36 in a week, you can have this require additional approval or show you a warning. But this is really kind of, again, where we define a lot of our settings for trades, things like that. All right. I did have a couple questions here on accruals. So for accruals, if I go into this section here, this is where we can actually define these profiles. So we'll go through and actually set up for year 0 through 5, you get this many hours, 6 through 10, you get this many hours, etc. So you'll have to essentially either provide us that information or you can set this up yourself. And then once that's all set up, then what we'll do, depending on when you come on board, we'd have to match up what your balances are at that day and time to what they are in our system. So that's something our system specialists and our support team will help you out with. Okay. A handful of payroll questions rolling in. How does payroll work? Just as a blanket statement. Really, the big question is, what do you need us to give you? So that generally is going to boil down to what your finance department and what your payroll system is. If you're using something that will accept a CSV import, which is, I would say, the most common method of how we can assist people with payroll. So you can take a lot of your schedule data, you can export this into an Excel file in a CSV format, and that can be cleaned up and then sent right over so they can either review it themselves or they can actually, more often than not, as of late, they can import that directly into their payroll system, which will avoid any person on their end of things having to manually key that in. Now, the first question I ask you though is, what do we need to give them? So it's very common where we'll have to create specific pay codes. We're going to have to create specific positions and different details, different ways that we can communicate with that system. So if it says this in Aladtec, that means this in the payroll system. So we kind of have to map a lot of those fields, but more often than not, like I mentioned, the most common method is exporting this into Excel in a CSV format and transferring that over. One of the more complicated but advanced options that we can always give you too is access to our API. So if you have some IT resources, or maybe you're fairly tech savvy yourself, we can give you access to our API, which you can automatically extract data from our system however you want to. We do give access to a large portion of our data, and if there's anything we don't, we can typically just open that up. So I'd have to, again, learn a little bit more about what you're looking for to answer that, but that's what I would say is a general response. All right. And then I had one last question here. Someone did point out that we do have a time clock. If anybody's interested in this, we absolutely can set you up with our time clock. That generally does come at an additional fee, but if this is something that you do need for your department or for a portion of your department, it is a web-based kiosk. So you can set it up on specific machines. It is, of course, interfaced and directly integrated into our schedule. So the time clock knows when you're supposed to be working. So if you go and try to clock in and you're really early or really late, the system's going to make you type in a reason as to why. But ultimately what the time clock is going to be giving you is more accurate payroll data. So you can then run a time clock report. And I also mentioned a little bit earlier, also in the realm of payroll is the timesheets. So if you are a department who still needs people to sign off on their hours every pay period or go through that process, we can either pull in the scheduled data into this timesheet, or we can pull in the time clock data into this timesheet. All right, but that's about all the time that we have here today. I really appreciate everybody who joined in. Absolutely, again, feel free to check out any of the handouts in the chat. If you look at that, you will see how to get a hold of us. You can either give us a call at 888-749-5550, and we'd be happy to help out and answer any of your questions or get you in front of a demo system, or for any other additional information, just www.aladtec.com, and there's a ton of great resources in there too. But again, thanks you everybody for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day.